and welcome to the 174th annual meeting of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. We have achieved our quorum for this meeting. We've got 84 people participating now from literally all over the world, so welcome to all of you. It's being held virtually, I think, for the first time ever, so I hope everything goes smoothly, despite our little technical difficulty right at the start there. Hopefully everything else now will go really well for us. So let me get the meeting started. In accordance with the Royal Charter and bylaws, only corporate members and associate members are entitled to participate in the business of an annual meeting. Other members may attend as observers, but they shall not be entitled to be heard or indeed to vote. Now, we are doing this electronically. The software we are using means that we have contact details for everybody in the meeting right now, and I can confirm that if you do see an option on your screen later to vote, it does in fact mean that you are entitled to vote. So before we get the meeting underway, I do have some procedural matters to address. Firstly, this meeting is being conducted virtually with consent being granted by the Charity Commission under a Section 105 order. Secondly, as many of you will be aware, unfortunately our Trustee Board report and annual accounts were delayed in publication this year. In fact, they were only made available to members on the 14th of May, which is actually 12 days before this meeting. Now, bylaw 73.3 requires these reports to be made available 21 days prior to the annual meeting. The reason for the delay, it was partly related to COVID, but mainly due to the depth and thoroughness of root and branch review carried out by our new auditors, BDO LLP. This has been a very, very thorough and rigorous audit. It's gone back through our financial records over 10 years, and it has resulted in a number of clarifications that we had to make and queries that we had to address, so it has taken a little bit longer, so we do apologise for that. But the accounts now have been fully audited and signed off. Now, we have taken legal advice and considered a number of options for how to handle this delay, and the advice we've received is that we should go ahead with the meeting as planned. However, to ensure there's no detriment to our members, that we should leave the ballot about the adoption of the Trustee Board's report and annual accounts open until the 5th of June, thereby allowing you the full 21 days for all of you to consider and look through the report. So there will be no vote taken at this meeting to adopt the Trustee Board's report and annual accounts. We will, however, we will still take questions, so we can still have the discussion, and we'll then also provide you the opportunity to continue to ask questions by email, and later on you'll see an email address to do that with. And we will produce a summary of the main questions and answers, and they'll be published by the Trustee Board on our website prior to the 5th of June. And then you're free to vote up until that point, and what we'll do then is that we will post the results on the website on the 9th of June. I would like to explain about our electronic voting system today. We are using this for the first time, and it will result in some slight delays to our meeting today because we have to wait for the results to come back into the studio. So the reason for this is that the presenters, Colin and myself on the stage now, we're about 30 seconds ahead of you. So when we go to the interactive parts where we ask questions or ask you to vote, there will be a delay whilst we wait for your responses to come back in. So please do bear with us. We'll try and do our best to cover the pauses and make it as lively and as interactive as we can. So we'd like to thank the corporate and associate members who have conferred their votes in proxy ahead of this meeting, if they have not been able to attend but wish their views to be known. All proxy votes appointed by members will be made electronically in accordance with the proxy wishes that we've received. And finally, I'd like to thank the members who have emailed or posted questions to the Trustee Office in advance. We will respond to those at appropriate times through the meeting. So the business of the institution's annual meeting shall only be for the presentation and consideration of the Trustee Report and annual accounts for the year ending 31st of December 2020, but we will not be voting on that, as I've just explained. It will be for the appointment of the auditors, and we will vote on that. And it'll also be for the announcement of the results of the annual elections to Trustee Board and to our Council. Now, a copy of the minutes of last year's annual meeting, which was held on the 22nd of September, has been displayed on the institution's website, and it's been circulated through various means. You can find it on our website under the documents today. I'd now like to ask if there are any questions relating to these minutes, and if you do have questions, if you could just add those to the question button on your meeting homepage, that would be appreciated. And just whilst we're waiting for that to come through, at the same time, I'd like to ask if there are any matters arising from the minutes as well. So again, if you have any matters arising, then please add those into the question facility on the screen. So whilst we're waiting for that to come back, I'd like to cover some of our other business of the meeting. The notice convening this meeting was published in issue 1 of Professional Engineering in 2021 and has been available on the institution's website and was sent to all corporate and associate members either by post or by email. So to remind you of that notice, I'd like to ask our CEO to read the notice to you now.
The annual meeting of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers will be held online at 12 o'clock noon British Summer Time on Wednesday, the 26th of May 2021. The annual meeting of the institution will be held for the purpose of transacting the following business: the presentation and review of the trustees' report and annual accounts for the year ended 31st of December 2020, the appointment of the auditors, the announcement of the results of the trustee board and council elections. Only corporate members and associate members of the institution are entitled to participate in the business of the annual meeting. Other members may attend as observers but not entitled to be heard or to vote by Bylaw 38. Proxy votes will be accepted.
Okay, thank you, Colin. So whilst we're just waiting for those responses to come back, I just want to take the opportunity to talk about the virtual meeting format today. I have to say we are really excited to be doing it this way for many reasons, but perhaps the prime one is that it's much more inclusive. We now have around 110 people online, which is more than we get at a normal physical meeting, and it allows people literally all around the IMechE world to participate. So it's much more inclusive, and it allows people to participate on an equal basis. So I hope you like the format. It's the first time we've done it, as I said. So if you have feedback, then let us know what you think. If we can polish it up even more, we're happy to do so. But I think it's really exciting. I'm really pleased to be part of it, and we would like to see your feedback. And later in the meeting, you'll see an email pop up, which is about how to respond to other things. Use the same email that you see, which is trusteeoffice@imeche.org, and then we'll make sure we get all of your responses considered. We're also making a behind-the-scenes video about this production today because it has been quite an amusing thing to do. So I hope you like it when you see it. It'll go out on our normal social media channels later on today, and it'll probably appear on our website as well. Okay, so we now have one or two questions coming in. The first one that we have is if we had already voted online, will we be required to update or confirm our vote in today's meeting, or can we leave those instructions to stand? And the answer to that is that you can leave them to stand. When you went into the meeting, if you voted by proxy, you'd have had an option to say you want that to stand or you want to change your mind. So you do have the option there. But if you voted by proxy and you take no action during this meeting, then that vote will stand. Okay, I'm just going to give a few seconds if any more questions coming in. And if we haven't got any further comments, then with that, I'm now going to sign the minutes. Here we go. Okay, so the question that we've just asked is, we haven't got a window to vote on the acceptance. That is that what we've done is if we had questions, we would have responded to the question. And we've had a response to that, so we're going to take that as our authority now to sign the minutes from the last meeting. So I will do that right now. So thank you very much for that, and we'll now move on through the proceedings. So we are using Civica today for our electronic voting, so they will be the tellers for the resolutions today. Now, the first item on the agenda is the presentation and consideration of the Trustee Board report and annual accounts for the year ending 31st of December 2020. These have been advertised and have been available from the Trustee Department and been published on our website. So I now call on Phil Peel, who's joining us via video link from Switzerland. He is our Honorary Treasurer, as you know, and he's going to present the Trustee report and annual accounts for the year ending 31st of December 2020. So over to you, Phil.
Thank you, President. Hope you can all hear me fine. Ladies and gentlemen, depending on your location, I would like to wish you a good morning, afternoon or evening, and thank you for your participation at this year's annual meeting. As Honorary Treasurer of the institution, I am pleased to present the Trustee Board's report and annual accounts for the year ending 31st of December 2020. These are the areas I would like to talk through today. As we have used a new auditor for last year's report, 2020 report, BDO LLP, I will start with a summary of the key areas of change in our financial statements. I will then provide an overview of our 2020 financial figures, give an update on trends and reserves, and talk through the performance of our trading subsidiaries. Then move on to say some words about the ongoing impact of COVID-19 on our 2021 operations before concluding with some closing remarks. So as an introduction, a few words about the 2020 report. So it is a big report. It's a 100-page report and annual accounts for 2020, and it's available for your information on our website. A full PDF version can be downloaded from the website. There are a number of links. I've just given one there, but I think there's about 2 or 3 links in addition on the webpage where you can gain access to the report. I would encourage you to look through it if you've not already had the opportunity to do so. So now moving on to the changes in the financial statements resulting from the audit performed for the first time for last year's accounts by BDO LLP. So there have been some significant changes to the preparation of our financial statements that have meant a longer audit period than expected. So Terry's already mentioned a few things about that. Those have also been coupled with the pandemic restrictions, which have meant that all of the audit field work that we've had to do has had to be completed remotely. A number of unanticipated prior period adjustments were also needed to our financial statements, involving a detailed review of our historic fund allocation between restricted, unrestricted and endowment funds going back many years. And so Terry's already mentioned it was back to sort of 2012, but it was some areas it was actually back even further than that. So it has been a very, very rigorous review of our allocations. I have to say it's not impacted the totals, and you can read full information about it in our financial note 26, which is provided on pages 95 and 96 of the report if you wish to understand exactly what the impact has been. But just to emphasise, it has not impacted totals, but it has impacted the allocations between funds. In addition to that, our Stevenson Fund, which we initiated in 2014, has been restated at fair value rather than cost, which is what we have done in previous accounts. So I am very grateful, I have to say, to BDO LLP for the extremely thorough approach that they have taken with their audit work this year. Coupled with the difficulties imposed by the pandemic, they and the IMechE finance team have performed a truly monumental task to pull everything together. However, there was, as already mentioned, an unfortunate delay in issuing our accounts, which were ultimately approved and released on the 14th of May, and hence, as already been stated, after the deadline specified in our bylaws of the 21 days prior to the annual meeting. Consequently, the vote on adoption has now been extended to the 5th of June to allow the full period for member review. I will now present the financial overview for 2020. And as I did in last year's presentation, I'm going to focus on the income first. and then I'm going to do a quick comparison against the 2019 results. So firstly, I'd like to just remind us of the major area of income we got in 2019, the 1.9 million from the disposal of our freehold property located at 6 Old Queen Street in London. So just as a reminder, that sale was one of the recommendations from the finance review and undertaken to increase our free reserves level, which had dropped well below the target set by the trustees. If we now look at 2020, overall there has been a 21% reduction in income compared to previous year, as many areas have been hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, on a positive note, income from our main area of revenue generation and membership subscriptions was largely received before the pandemic lockdown hit and gave a slight increase compared to previous year. However, there were significant reductions in income from other trading and learned society activities as restrictions affect operators quite severely from Q2 onwards. So if we now move on to the next slide, where we cover the expenditure. By careful review of our areas of spend during the course of the year, it has been possible to manage our expenditure carefully within 2020. Overall, this has led to a 17% reduction in expenditure compared to prior year. The main areas of reduction have been savings made from switching from physical to virtual meetings and the related reduction in member and staff travel expenses. So if we now see what the impact is on our overall operating result and compare that to 2019. So as in 2019, no exceptional costs were recorded in 2020. 400,000 was gained from the UK furlough scheme payments, which for accounting purposes are treated as additional income. The overall operating result for 2020 was a gain of almost 1 million compared to a net gain in 2019 if we exclude the sale of 6 Old Queen Street as an exceptional item of 700,000. If we now look at the net movement in our funds, which looks in addition to the operating result, also at the market impact on our investments and our deferred benefit pension scheme. In 2020, the financial markets were severely impacted by uncertainty related to the pandemic, and our investments suffered from that, losing by year-end 750,000. Actuarial review of our pension scheme has been performed by a qualified independent company of actuaries. The pandemic led to a sharp drop in the discount rate and also in gilt yields, and resulting in a significant shift in the predicted deficit by year end to a level of 7 million. So overall, by close of 2020, we've seen a net reduction in funds of close to 6.9 million, a decline compared to the previous year of 10.9 million. However, I have to say that the current market situation is now much improved compared to year end, and our investments and pension scheme have since bounced back quite significantly. If I now move on to look at our year-on-year financial trends, if I start with the income and expenditure trends, so this slide shows the trends since 2011. So it's quite a busy slide, so I'll just explain to you what it's actually showing. So the lines which you read from the left-hand axis in terms of financial level represent operating income in the blue or operating expenditure in the red over this period. The columns, read from the right-hand axis, represent the surplus or deficit from operating activities. Those are in the light green, as well as other income or expenditure shown in the dark green. Just as a quick reminder, in 2010, and it's off the graph, but in 2010, we received £11 million profit from the sale of our former publishing business. Then from 2011 through to 2015, we also received approximately £2 million per year additional publishing income on an earn-out basis from the 2010 sale agreement. As a result, operating income remains slightly higher than expenditure over this period. However, from 2016 onwards, publishing income ceased, and there was also a downturn in income generated by our commercial trading subsidiaries. I'll talk about them in a few minutes. And these have been acquired using some of the proceeds of the publishing sale. So as a result, we fell into a situation of having significant operating deficit. By 2019, we'd successfully addressed those issues, due in large part to the financial review that was actually performed within the institution, and we had returned the institution to a positive operating position for the first time since 2015. Also, by careful financial management, we've been able to sustain that positive position during 2020, despite the difficulties imposed by the COVID-19 restrictions. If I now move on to look at our reserves trend. So I showed this slide last year, and it's useful to show the way that our reserve levels have trended year on year over the last decade. For clarification, just to understand the lines and the numbers, unrestricted reserves are assets of the institution which can be spent on any activity at the discretion of the trustees, as opposed to restricted funds, which have to be held for a particular purpose as specified by the original provider of the funds. Free reserves are a subset of unrestricted funds, being those held in easily accessible form, for example, current assets and investments, which can be easily converted into cash to fund day-to-day operations. The level of free reserves in 2018 had dropped to a level lying significantly below target and requiring corrective action. At the end of 2020, free reserves have been increased to about 5.1 million, representing 5 months of current charitable expenditure. This level stands us in much better stead for future financial decision-making. So if I now move on to look at our trading subsidiaries, which have been sort of somewhat in focus in recent days with regard to discussion within the institution. So for those who are not so familiar with our trading activities are managed under the umbrella of the PEP Limited company, which was established to replace our publishing company, as I already mentioned, which we sold in 2010, as a means of generating profit to fund our learned society activities. It is governed by the PEP Limited board, which reports directly to the finance board and ultimately to the trustee board. And as you can see listed on the slide, there has been significant board activity since the creation of both boards took place in October 2019, with both boards meeting a total of 20 times during the course of 2020 to keep on top of the COVID-19 difficulties that we were facing. The day-to-day operation of each subsidiary unit is run by a general manager, but support is provided by operating boards, which provide input on regular oversight and direction. So the 4 trading subsidiaries that we currently operate as business units under PEP Limited are One Birdcage Walk, Learning and Development, Argyle, Rowan, and Sonispection. And I'll say more about those business units in the next slide. So here's a quick overview and also a statement in terms of how the business units actually performed during the course of 2020. So starting in the top left, One Birdcage Walk is our oldest trading subsidiary and covers venue and room hire activities, primarily for our main building in London. In 2020, its operations were severely impacted by COVID-19 and the resultant closure of the building, with the turnover dropping by over 80% compared to prior year, to only about 4% of the PEP Limited total. And just for reference, the PEP Limited total for all of the business units was about 6.5 million turnover in 2020. If we now move on to look at our learning and development business, top right, acquired in 2011, this covers our training activities based out of One Birdcage Walk. It offers both technical as well as leadership and management skills training, mostly through dedicated engineering clients. 2020 was also severely disrupted by the pandemic, and despite switching to virtual training offerings, business has been affected as companies have drastically cut back on their training programs. Turnover dropped to about 50% of previous year, and that represents about 16% of the PEP Limited 2020 total. So moving on to bottom left, Argyll Owain, acquired in 2012. They offer training and certification in non-destructive testing and inspection, and they have operated out of the IMechE Engineering Training Centre in Sheffield since 2015. So our Sheffield office was closed for several months during the first lockdown last year, and interest has been slow in picking up again with regards to the training that they offer. Turnover dropped to about 63% of the previous year's level, representing about a quarter of the PEP Limited total for last year. And then finally, our fourth business unit, Sonispection, who we acquired in 2013, who manufacture flawed specimens for the non-destructive testing and the non-destructive evaluation industry. They're based in both Lancaster in the UK and Charlotte, North Carolina in the States, and providing global coverage for their products. The UK business in 2020 focused on several critical infrastructure projects, for example, the nuclear new build at Hinkley Point C, and so remained largely unaffected by the pandemic effects. Overall turnover was down only 6% compared to prior year, representing the majority, 54% of the PEP Limited 2020 total. So if we now look at the profit and loss trends for each of those four businesses since 2012, we can see after a positive improvement in our commercial trading activities in 2019, all business units, apart from perhaps Sonispection, have been significantly impacted by the poor trading in 2020. And this is as a direct result of the pandemic impacting on their areas of business. So if we now have a look at the ongoing impacts of COVID-19, the pandemic continues, and moving on from the financial performance in 2020, it is still having an impact on our operations clearly within 2021. So I would like to now just have a look at what those are and the situation that we see ourselves in effectively going forward. So again, if I stay on the theme of PEP Limited, our business units continue to find operations difficult in 2021 under the continuing conditions imposed by the UK pandemic restrictions. We do not expect recovery to normal business over the remainder of 2021 in many areas, with total turnover of only 7 million predicted, so a slight increase compared to 2020. It is to be expected that several years will be needed before PEP Limited is trading again at pre-COVID levels of about 9 to 10 million turnover per annum. If we now look at the impact of COVID-19 on the charity, the institution continues to adopt proactive measures in order to meet the COVID-19 challenge. Clearly, COVID is nowhere near over, and we continue to have to actually address it on a day-by-day basis. So with that regard, the 2021 budget has included certain anticipated reductions in income stream for the institution, the main one of which is in the area of membership subscriptions. We expect to see a decline in membership subscriptions coming in from our fees as a result of people being impacted by the pandemic. The other area that we also expect to be impacted on is our ability to hold learning society activities and events. It's difficult to predict the speed at which physical events may be possible, but our use of hybrid events wherever possible will actually be rolled out. And for example, this year, the educational challenges such as Formula Student are adopting, wherever they can, a hybrid approach. Savings continue to be made by the further use of furloughing schemes and reduction in member and staff expenses. So whilst overall 2021 operations are targeted at break-even level, the first half of the year has shown some improvements against that, and we are hopeful of a more positive year-end result. But unfortunately, only time will tell, as we are limited to how quickly the return to normality will take compared to the COVID restriction lift. So, to conclude my presentation with some closing remarks. The unexpected arrival of the global pandemic meant 2020 was an exceptionally challenging year for the institution, requiring regular review of the financial measures needed to address it. Despite this, we have still managed to achieve a significant operating surplus and have grown rather than eaten into our free reserves. Our investments and pension scheme have recovered some of the losses seen at 2020 year-end, and market conditions continue to show some positive trends. It is hoped that our future operations will benefit from the UK vaccination programme and also the other vaccination programmes taking place globally, and allow some relaxation of the ongoing COVID-19 measures. However, the road to recovery is expected to be slow, and as with many charities, it is anticipated that 2021 will be another difficult financial year. So, in conclusion, I would personally like to thank all our members and all our staff for their valuable efforts over the last year. A special thanks to those involved in the detailed preparation of the annual report and accounts, given the tremendous effort involved in doing that, and the challenging circumstances that the pandemic has imposed this year. So, to conclude, I commend the Trustee Board's report and annual accounts for 2020 for your consideration, and if not already voted, hope you will vote for their adoption before the new deadline date of 5th of June. So, I will now hand back to the President. Thank you.
Okay, Phil, well, thank you for an excellent and a very clear presentation of the Trustee Board report and annual accounts. That's really appreciated. So I will shortly open the discussion on the Trustee Board report and annual accounts for year ending 2020. In case we're not able to deal completely with every point which may be raised, it is important that an accurate record be made of all that is said, and that certainly will be done. So contributions and questions are therefore invited via the comments section of the meeting software. Your name and grade of membership will automatically appear beside your comment. So I'd now like to open the discussion for the Trustee Board reports and annual accounts for 2020. We'll endeavour to take questions from as many different people as possible to ensure all points of interest to you are covered. And I believe we've already got some questions that came in earlier. So Colin, over to you.
Thank you very much. The opening question is from Andy Mellors Fellow and Felix Schmidt Fellow, joint question. The President's statement and the future plans section of the annual report make reference to the need and desirability of deciding on a way forward for the main property asset of the institution, namely 1 and 3 Birdcage Walk. The risk appetite statement in 2020 makes reference also to this asset as being one of the major organisational risks. We realise that members ultimately have control over what happens to Birdcage Walk, but what information will be provided to us, and when will we have that to allow us to make our own judgments?
I'll respond to that one. I mentioned we have got a real estate strategy group. They've been operating now for kind of 2 years, and they've been going into some real detail on this, looking at all the options that we have for the future of our headquarters building. In broad terms, they have recommended a particular course of action, which is namely to release 3 Birdcage Walk on a long lease, and we would then retain and invest in 1 Birdcage Walk, which is what all the members know as our headquarters building, pretty much. The real estate group are refining this option to find solutions which will work the best for the institution, and are actively seeking member feedback. If you look at our website now, you'll see there's a consultation process just got underway, and we're really looking to look at what members' feedback is very closely, and then we will start to refine the options that we have. We'll certainly look at mitigating the risks, and we'll also be evaluating the financial impact of all aspects of this. So the next stage of information, which is being prepared now, will be released quite shortly to our membership. That will be well ahead of the member vote, and that will present what will then be a recommended option and the analysis around this, enabling then all voting members to really review, consider very closely, and vote accordingly. Okay. So we are now getting some questions coming in on the live stream. So the first question I can see here is from Richard Lockett. This is that the restated accounts for 2019 now show non-charitable costs of 1.1 million lower than they did when they were published last year. Can you explain why and where the costs have been moved to? Was that presumably in the charity? So, Colin, would you like to take that question?
Yes, I was looking. Richard is referring to page 75 of the report, which is note 3 of note 3. What he's referring to there is that in 2019 there was a distribution of the overhead cost which totalled £6.703 million across the different operations of the organisation, both the charity and the subsidiaries. And the BDO LLP reanalysis of those suggested that that distribution shown there was not as accurate as it could be, and so there's been a restatement. Richard's question is, well, where did the money go? The answer is that the total 6703 did not change at all, Richard. It still is 6703. And that note 3, is really just a statement of recommended practice for charity reporting as to the way that we show the overall overheads of the organisation. And so actually they were always in the SOFA, the Statement of Financial Activities of the organisation. They were always in there. The note 3 just refers to a distribution that, candidly, is a bit of a siding. It's a bit of a side issue, and it is not accurate. When we do our management accounts, you will see that we operate a more accurate and appropriate allocation of overheads, which actually is a slightly different figure again, but it shows the way the overheads are actually attracted by particular business units.
Colin, thank you for that. I hope that's very clearly addressed that particular point. I'm looking at the next question now, which I can see I think may have been already answered electronically, but I will read out the question anyway. That's from Mrs. Louise Shaw, who's a fellow of the institution. The question is the level of reserves assessed against operating costs during COVID times, which is a reduced level of activity and expenditure due to the virtual meetings, or is it assessed against expenditure in normal times where there's not obviously greater face-to-face activity and consequential expenditure? The answer, which you bring the answer back, please. The answer is that it's assessed based on operating costs at that time. Okay, so it will be affected by the reduction in costs for the virtual activities that we've been seeing, but obviously that will start to return to normal as we come out of lockdown. But we still expect to see a lot of virtual activity. What we're finding is that we're engaging more and more members by doing things virtually, so I suspect we're not going to go back to a fully physical way of operating. I think virtual's here to stay because it has its advantages, and I think we've been through a learning curve, perhaps forced upon us, but nevertheless, it's been a good experience, and we've had a lot of positive feedback, particularly from our international members, as to how we handle virtual meetings. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is from...
It's a comment from Felix in response to your answer, Terry. So Felix Schmidt, fellow, has responded to say thank you for the answer you've given about 1 and 3 Bocage Walk. Yeah. And if I carry reading, it appears to be a high risk in the current circumstances due to the slow recovery. Is that a fair assessment?
Felix, it's a really good point to raise, and we are looking very closely at the risk of this. So we're very conscious that we're in a situation where the property market is slightly depressed in London. So we are looking at that very closely and taking expert advice. So we'll not be making any rushed decisions here. We'll make sure that whatever we take, the risks are assessed very clearly. We know what the risks are, where the risks are likely to be more significant, and we will be taking mitigating actions and reporting that back to all our members when we get a little bit further down the road. So we're very aware of the process. It's a big deal for us, to be honest. It's our biggest asset, as you said in your question, actually, and we need to be very responsible in how we deal with that. We have a problem we have to fix, There are different ways we can do it, but we are taking a lot of expert guidance on how we should do that. Okay, I can see a question now from Chris Lowther, who's a fellow. I'd like to congratulate the Finance Review team and the new Finance Board in turning around the institution's finances since 2018 and the special meeting. So it's a bit of a comment, but it is actually very well received. There's been a huge amount of activity to turn around our financial management, and you know, I think the team should be congratulated for what they've achieved, which is really, really great. So we have a further question now from Richard Lockett, who's a fellow. His comment is, I'm sorry I was not making myself clear. The line I mentioned, page 62, expenditure on non-charitable trading activities is 9.76 million for 2019, but last year was shown for 2019 as 10.866 million. So I don't know if you can comment on that further, Colin?
Yes, I can. Forgive me, the finance director also, I think, can comment on this perhaps after the meeting, but it relates to the same issue, Richard, which is that indeed the profitability of the charity is overstated on page 62 in the SOFA, and the profitability of the PEP subsidiaries are understated. So forgive me for saying that it did not. It does appear there. The actual profitability of the organisation, the bottom right-hand corner, is not changed by that. But you're exactly correct, Rich. I do apologise. The allocated overhead that is shown on the SOFA has changed in line with Note 3.
Okay, right, thank you, Colin. Let's look at the next questions, if there are any. I think the trailer's run dry at the moment, so we'll just give you a few more minutes to see if there are any other questions on this. But as I said earlier, please remember that today's not the end of the opportunity for you to raise questions. You've got quite a period of time yet, up to the 5th of June, midday on the 5th of June, to continue to raise questions by email. So we can show you the email address, just if you want to jot that down, as to how you can ask those questions going forward. We'll just do that very shortly. That's the trustee office at IMechE.org. So please just make a note of that, and if you have any further questions, then please feel free to submit them, and we will do our best to answer them, and the questions and the answers will be posted on our website. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, and I'd like to make a few personal comments really on this year. It has been an unusual year, an unusual year to be president for sure. But we've had many major things to deal with this year. I would say, you know, we've had probably 3 major extraordinary events to deal with, alongside what would be normal presidential duties for me anyway. And these were the implementation of the governance review recommendations, the wrapping up of the aftermath of our 2018 situation, and also the coronavirus pandemic, which none of us were expecting. So I think any one of those would have made a very busy year for us, but to have 3 occurring concurrently, it created an unprecedented workload for the whole team. I say it's almost a relief to get to the end of our presidential year, but Peter sat in the room behind the scenes here listening to this, so I'm not going to say that. But it's been a busy year for everybody, and I'm ever so grateful for everybody who's put so much effort in today, beyond the normal, really, to get us through this year. You know, but despite all these things, you know, all these challenges we've had, you know, significant progress has been made, you know, on so many fronts, and I'd like to just talk about some of those aspects of it now. So the governance review process, it is actually concluding this month after running for over 2 years. So a really thorough root and branch review of our governance. Dr. Kerry Mashford and her implementation group have done an outstanding job, really, and I commend her and her team, really, for all they've done for the institution. We are in your debt. You've worked really hard, and you've produced a really outstanding result. And when you look at what they've done, there are many jewels in the crown of our new approach to governance. One that has particularly impressed me, and I know it's been really well received by our members, has been the new nominations committee, which we call NOMCO. It's opened up the institution, allowing many members who wanted to be more closely involved with the institution, with the running of the institution, a chance to do so. And that's in a very open and fair manner. And we've got people engaged with the institution now that have never been active before. And I think that's a really major achievement. So my thanks go to Isabel Pollock-Hulf, who's the chair of NOMCO, and her team as well. They've made a huge contribution and really a huge positive impact, with what they've done, with the work that they've done for the institution. I thank all of them. We have this year worked very closely with our regulators, as we always do, the Charity Commission and, of course, the Engineering Council. And this year, we've had to bring them up to speed on all of our governance review work, and it has met with their approval. I'm very pleased about that. They've been with us all the way through this journey. In the case of the Engineering Council as well, I want to mention a couple of things, because we've just completed our 5-year licence review with them, and we've passed that with flying colours, with no major non-conformances, straight through first time, which is absolutely amazing. We take these things for granted, but if we lost our ability to offer professional registration, we'd have a serious issue. So we do take it very, very seriously. And I think every 5 years, it gets that little bit harder. They raise the bar a little bit each time. So very pleased that we've got through that. And my thanks to the member and staff team, actually, that have worked together as one team on this. That they progress all of our registrations, and they've helped us to get through that, really. I'm also very pleased to report that we have once again secured the #1 position in the UK. The #1 position for the most new engineering registrations by a professional engineering institution. It's great to tell you that. I'm really proud of that, because it's the 9th consecutive year that the institution has achieved that. And I think that's astounding, really. It really says a lot. Even during the pandemic, we still came out as #1. So much to celebrate there, an amazing feat. And it says so much about the commitment of the team that drive our registrations, and also about the really good standing of our institution. So I think we should all be rightly proud of that. So this year, we've already spoken about the building. We do have some big decisions to make, about what we do with our building in the future. It is in need of major refurbishment. It is our most significant asset by miles. So we set up a real estate strategy group in 2019. They've been working really hard behind the scenes. They've looked at a whole variety of options that we have, and they are making good progress. So that group is chaired by Helena Rivers. She's one of our trustees. She's done a fantastic job with that. I'm really proud of everything. I'm part of that team as well, and it has now just entered a full member consultation phase. So you can bring your ideas forward now and make your suggestions, and many members have done that. It's clearly a very emotive subject. Some people are very passionate about the building, and I am one of those people. I think it's great. It's part of what the IMechE is. Some members have different views. They feel perhaps we don't need a building. So it's quite interesting. There's certainly no apparent consensus, which is going to make it really interesting as we go forward. But we do have to find a solution to this problem. And we will continue through the consultative process to see if we can find out a way through. We are developing a proposal. I touched on it before in the response to Felix Smith's question. And we're exploring the feasibility of really what looks like the most viable option within that thread, and this will be brought to our members for a vote in the coming months. Okay, so we have this year been exploring closer collaboration with other major professional institutions, the Institute of Civil Engineers, the Institution of Engineering Technology, in areas of mutual interest, such as things like COP26, so the UN Climate Change Conference that's going to happen in the UK later this year. And preparations for this are really gaining momentum, and you'll be hearing more about this over the coming months. But there's a lot of benefit through our collaboration with these institutions, so I'd like to see that we do more of that going forward. As you may be aware, we are now focusing our attention on the future, on our strategic planning, and we now have a new strategy committee that was recruited by our new NOMCO that I mentioned earlier. I'm very grateful to Peter Flynn, who's led that process really well throughout the year. It's up and running, it's operational. You'll be hearing an awful lot more from that team as the year progresses. Very soon, we'll also see Dr. Alice Bunn take up office as our new CEO, and I'd like to wish her every success in that role. She's absolutely fantastic. She was an outstanding candidate, and that's why she's got the job. In doing so, I must also recognise the outstanding contribution of the man on my left-hand side here, Dr. Colin Brown. Over the last 3 years, Colin, you've done an outstanding job. My sincere thanks. You stepped in at the last minute and you've taken the reins, and really you've led us through what was a really difficult period, and I'm really sincerely grateful for that. But you're not done yet. You've got a few more months to go, so let's not carry it away. Hopefully we'll have a chance to give you a good send-off when we get round to that. But I think really it's my final chance to say thank you formally, so that's what it's all about today. You've done some great service for the institution, not just as CEO, but as Engineering Director before that, and we are very grateful, so thank you very much. So, sadly, it's time for me to sign off as well, so my year as President comes to an end today. I would hope you will all agree that we are now in a position where the ship is stable, it's pointing in the right direction, and I think we are now ready to embark on a new journey. And that course will be plotted out by our newly formed Stratcom and their strategic plan. So we're in a good place. And if we get it right, and we will get it right, it will allow us to really make a difference and demonstrably improve the world through engineering, which is what we're here to do, really. So I'd like to wish incoming President Peter Flynn every success in his new year at the helm of our fine institution. So let me get back to the formal items on the agenda, which is the next one is the appointment of the auditors for 2021. Now we propose that BDO LLP, who's been our auditor this year, be appointed to audit 2021 at a remuneration to be negotiated. So should there be anyone wishing to comment on this, I'd now like to open the auditor appointment for discussion. If you have any comments to make, please do so in the question function now. Any comments you want to make at all, we're happy to respond to those. And Colin, whilst we wait for these to come in.
Yes, thank you, Terry. While we're waiting for those to come in, there is, I think, a question that many of us will have on our mind, which is that the members would like to know more about why it is that the length of time that it took to issue the Trustee Board report and annual accounts this year. It's clearly led to some issues in running this meeting, and could you therefore elaborate what caused the delay and provide an assurance that next year it will be on time?
Okay, thank you, Colin. If I can try and respond to that, we want to be as open and transparent as we can. And I have to say that there's only a certain point in time when we can formally start the audit process, because we have to wait for the figures to get together, really. And I think really part of the reason was it was partly the impact of COVID, and I say that because our auditing process is quite interactive, and we normally set up a physical data room. The process is very interactive. Our auditors have access to everything in one place, but due to the lockdown situation this year, it wasn't possible to do it that way. So we've had to do everything virtually and have to continue to respond to requests for additional information, and it has taken longer. It has caught us out and taken longer to do that, really. Additionally, our annual reports are getting longer and longer. So the 2018 report had 72 pages. The 2019 report had 90 pages. The one we've just got out this year is 100 pages. So there's more and more information that we have to publish each year. So the task gets a little bit harder each year as well. And I mentioned earlier about the thoroughness of the audit process that we've been through with our new auditors. And I think that was perhaps the most significant factor. So we took the view that it was more important to ensure the process was rigorous, and to the credit, BDO has certainly been rigorous with this audit. We believe this is what members really want. They want the comfort to know that we've been through a very thorough and detailed independent assessment of our financial affairs. The audit trail this year took us back over 10 years. It's never happened before. So when we do that, we have to respond, and it does take time. But we're very clear now that what's been presented this year is a very robust and a very firm basis for future audits. So we wouldn't expect to go through this process again next year. So the team who prepare the Trustee Board report and annual accounts, they've had a lot of comments this year. People have criticised them for being late, but really they've worked very, very long hours to do this. It's been a monumental task. It has caught us out a little bit as to how long it was going to take, but every credit to them for getting through the process and producing what was a very robust report. We're very confident really that the issues that caused the delay this year they will not affect future years. We can't control whether we have another pandemic, but what we can say is that we've climbed the learning curve of how to do this virtually. So even if we had a pandemic next year, I'm very confident that we will be able to manage it much, much better. Okay, so I've not seen any comments come back now on this, on the auditors. So you'll now see a voting box appear on your screens. And I'd like to ask you all to cast your vote straight away, please. The vote will be open for around 1 minute, and I'll let you know what the outcome is as soon as we get back here. Okay, so let's go to the vote now on the auditors for this year. Okay, welcome back. We now have the votes in for that. I can tell you what the results are now. So we have 4,399 in favour. We have 93 against, and we have 240 abstentions. We have had obviously a lot of proxy votes submitted in advance as well, and I can tell you that from the proxy votes we have 4,353 for, 92 against, and 236 abstentions as well. Okay, so with that, you can see we have the majority we need. I declare that motion is carried. So thank you for your votes. So we now come to the ballot which was held for the elections to our trustee board and to council. And I'll ask our Chief Executive Officer on my left-hand side here, Dr. Colin Brown, to now announce the results that everybody's waiting for. Colin.
Thank you very much, President. The results of the 2021 elections to the Trustee Board and the Council were as follows. The Trustee Board President, Peter Flynn, elected unopposed. For President-elect, Philip Peel. For Vice President, Giles Hartill. And for Ordinary Member of Trustee Board, Bridget Eickhoff. For Council, Fellows, in alphabetical order, David Hughes, Sylvain Jamet, John Lowe, Martin Robinson, and Ruth Shilston. For Members of Council, all elected unopposed, Esfandia Khalegi, Sarah Rice, and Kevin Shelton. The total number of votes cast was 6,732, being 10.2% of the eligible corporate and associate members. The number of votes cast by post was 3,234, and those cast online 3,498. The total number of votes found to be invalid were 165 for the President-elect panel, 193 for the Vice President panel, 200 for the ordinary member of the Trustee Board panel, and 351 for the members of Council Fellow category. Separately, following the international regional elections, Chris Chung has been elected Chair of the Northeast Asia region, and Leslie Yao has been elected Chair of the Oceania region. Please join me in congratulating the successful candidates who bring their knowledge and experience to our Trustee Board, Council and our regional deliberations. I also want to take a moment to give very special thanks to those who are retiring from their outstanding support over the last year or more years to all of our work. Peter Flynn will be the 136th President of our institution. He has a distinguished career in automotive, aerospace, railway and process industries. He has an MA in Mechanical Sciences from Cambridge, but he also holds an MBA and has attended the International Senior Management Programme at Harvard Business School. He started his career with the Military Aircraft Division of what is now BAE Systems on projects such as the Anglo-French Jaguar. After a spell then at Leyland DAF, he joined BREL ABB in Derby, now part of Alstom's UK rail business, as head of engineering. He was closely involved in the restructuring of the rail company after ABB took full control, setting up and running the body shell division, of which he was director, based in York. Subsequently in ABB, he was managing director of ABB Engineering Services, ABB UTEC, a 750-person international technical consultancy. His most recent industrial role was as managing director of Vectra Group Limited, an engineering consultancy specialising in safety work for hazardous industries. Since 2007, he's worked mainly at the interface between industry, government and academia. He helped Innovate UK establish their Catapult programme, and during 2009-10, he was project director for the £40 million technology centre at Manufacturing Technology Centre at Anstey. In 2014, he then moved on to create the Aerospace Technology Institute. Since withdrawing from active consultancy, he's written a book entitled Managing Technology and Product Development Programmes, published by John Wiley & Sons. And Peter is a long-standing active member of our institution. He's been chairman of our Manufacturing Industries Division, until recently was also still the main point of contact for the TMMX Awards.
Thank you, Colin. So I'd just like to also add my congratulations to all those who've been successful in our elections. And my final task as your president now is to welcome formally Peter into his presidential office. So I'm just going to stand up. I need to sanitise my hands. It's the times we live in, I'm afraid. And give Peter this medallion that's hanging around my neck, and it's quite a weight on your shoulders, actually, Peter, as you'll find out. But it is a great honour to be president, and I do sincerely wish you every success.
Thank you.
In your year.
Okay. Right. Well, the first puzzle is to hook this on, and I hope I'm up to that simple task. Okay, there we are.
Peter.
Terry, thank you very much indeed.
Congratulations and every success in your year as president. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, yes, thank you very much indeed, Terry. My first duty, which is actually a very pleasant one, is I would like to ask past President, Professor Joe McGeoch, who's based in Edinburgh and was President between 2019 and 2020. I'd like him to say a few words of appreciation for Terry, please. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, President. I really am privileged to be asked to express our appreciation and thanks to Terry Spall for his unstinting service to us all, both members and staff of the institution, as our 135th president. As I thought about what I might say, it occurred to me how remarkable it is that how many things that can affect us all so profoundly can happen by chance. 2 years ago, on the 22nd of May 2019, Terry became the president-elect of the institution. He and I had never met before. Our earlier paths through the offices of the institution had occurred at different times in our careers. Yet, here we were, the two of us, having to deal together with the aftermath of the tumultuous events that had shaken this institution to its very core. The very future and direction of the IMechE depended on how we and the trustee board and the senior members of the institution and its staff tackled these grave issues. And they were grave issues. It also rested on how the two of us would actually get on. We'd both come from entirely different backgrounds. Terry from the automotive industry, me from academia. And I can assure you that that combination could be an absolute recipe for disaster. Or it might just work that by chance these two individuals, thrown together almost by fate, might be okay in working together. And I'm happy to say that's actually how it worked out. And let me explain why. Shortly after the AGM, those 2 years ago, I found that Terry had set off to climb the three highest peaks of the UK: Ben Nevis, Snowdon and Scafell Pike, over a weekend. Terry was and is physically very fit. And by the way, so is our new president, who is a scratch golfer. Terry was also fit in many other ways for the highest offices of the IMechE. As the implementation of the major reviews of the institution got underway, the consultations with members, boards, committees, divisions, groups, council and staff, it was Terry's grasp of the issues at stake, his willingness to chair the implementation group, and with the many, many other difficult issues that we were having to deal with at the same time. That stamina of his to go that extra mile to reach agreement that made me realise how fortunate I was and am to be working with him. Terry was always available, and I should say Colin Brown too, in Birdcage Walk, to talk through issues by phone, text, email, and most recently by Teams, 7 days a week. There's another side to Terry that you should be aware of too. It was Terry who reminded me that being IMechE president shouldn't just be about dealing with problems or dealing with admin. There are members too, 120,000 of us. Terry invited me to MIRA, the Motor Industry Research Association, where he worked. He gave me a tour around its labs, seeing the exciting work that was going on. He drove me around the test track at high speed, a somewhat exhilarating, if unnerving experience I might add, and then opening a new facility in the evening for training of apprentices in the most up-to-date technology. And then even drove me back to my hotel that night. In February of that year, last year, when a planned visit to members in Hong Kong turned out to be coinciding with a major family event for me, it was Terry who stepped in and took my place, making a great success of the visit, for which I remain grateful to this day. Then came COVID. 18th of March 2020, That was the date for the start of the next formal cycle of elections at IMechE, which required a physical meeting in Birdcage Walk. It was Terry who texted me to express concern about health should I travel to London. I should say I did go, kept my 2 metres from everybody else, avoided crowds, and then self-isolated for 2 weeks when I got back from London. Terry took office as president on the 27th of May 2020. COVID has remained in full swing throughout his year in office. Despite all this, he has continued to oversee the work and life of the IMechE, from seeing through the outcome of the implementation group, visiting every branch and group worldwide. Who else would have thought of using virtual communication in this way, and dealing with other complex and extremely difficult issues that have also beset the IMechE through his time in office? And introducing Inside Track, a regular presidential overview of what is happening at the IMechE. Regular communications with past presidents. Contact with the presidents of the other major engineering institutions. You've heard Terry talk today about COP26. Formalising the IMechE approach to COVID by setting up its task force. Appointment of a new chief executive. I could just go on and on. Terry, you've described yourself as the virtual president of the IMechE. If that is the case, you've been the right president at the right time, with all the hallmarks of one of our great presidents. I commend to you all this end-of-term report for Terry Spall as our 135th President of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. Thank you, Terry.
Joe, thank you very much indeed for those kind words. And I would like to echo your comments about the contribution that Terry has made over the last 12 months, a monumental task, in fact. Monumental contribution. One thing I would like to correct, though, in Joe's commentary was that I'm not, unfortunately, a scratch golfer, and even in my heyday, I think 5 was the best I achieved. So, just in case anyone thinks I'm spending all my time out on the golf course, or will be spending all my time on the golf course in the next 12 months, let me just correct that misimpression. Okay. So this brings to a conclusion this year's somewhat unusual annual meeting. I do hope that you can join me shortly at 1:30 British Summer Time for my presidential address, which will, of course, also be delivered as an online webinar, and then for the question session afterwards. There is a link, if you don't have it already, on the events section of the institution's public website. So in conclusion, I look forward to serving you and the institution over the coming year. And I hope, COVID permitting, that I might meet many of you actually in person. So thank you all for attending this meeting, wherever in the world you may be. And I hope that you and your families keep safe and well. Thank you.